Ajahn Sona here, eagerly awaiting your questions, and I hope to be able to answer them. And so we'll start off, and we have today Bodhipala asking the questions here. Yeah.
Ajahn, our first question comes from the live chat. It's from Ali from Iran. Dear Ajahn, as I am having some trouble fully grasping this concept, would you shine some light on the subject of memory and its way of functioning? Is it a discrete faculty, or is it a synergy of multiple khandhas? Or is it simply sati? Where is it stored, and how is it carried from one life to another, and how can it be accessed from the subsequent life as if it were a memory of yesterday?
Yes, well, I'll try to channel this into a Dhamma kind of answer rather than a general philosophical or psychological answer. I think the first thing that might be wrong is the model where memories are stored somewhere, like in a hard drive. So maybe they are just potentials, and the whole experience, the whole nature of memory is just like everything else in the universe. It's a stream of events, not a thing. So, and I say this because in certain schools of Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism particularly had to sort of devise something later on in its commentarial tradition and its what we call Abhidhamma tradition of a storehouse consciousness, which stores karma and things like this. But basically the idea is just a theory or a hypothesis about how this happens. Buddhism, the Buddha himself doesn't explain, anything to do with stores or anything that's solid that travels through time. He just talks about processes. But he does say that it's possible to access previous life memories. And this is the same. This is not mysterious because in this present life, we quite often can't remember a substantial portion of our life. There are people, of course, and they're somewhat rare, but they can actually access any day of their life, and they can access even sometimes every hour or minute of their life. It's quite staggering. Most of us can't remember what we had for breakfast this morning, unless we sit down and really think about it. But there are people who can. But what's interesting is that if we sat down and thought about it long enough, we probably could remember what we had. So it's somewhere there, and we can access it, we can bring it up. And notice also that the process, they describe the process for uncovering memory, deep memories, and past life memories as the preliminary to that is the practice of mindfulness and ultimately samadhi. So one of the ways that notice that the Buddha on the night of his awakening first practiced samadhi. He entered the jhanas through breath meditation. He entered the jhanas, and then eventually he was able to access past lives and staggering amounts of past lives. But notice the samadhi comes first. So I think we have to shut down the superficial activity of the mind to get to access deep memories. And so memory is, and this might be an interesting experience for most people, and it certainly happened to me. I spent some years before I was a monk, I was a lay hermit, and I was alone, absolutely without any human company or any kind of distractions, even books. No electricity, no radios, no televisions, no communication. This is back in the early 80s. For years. And one of the things the mind does is when it has no external stimulation, it begins to inquire into its own past. So I was quite interested to see how far I could go back in memory, and I could recover all kinds of memories from grade 1 at school. In fact, I could start to see the colors. I could see the writing on the wall. I could see the shoes that I wore, the color of other kids' pants, what shirts they were wearing, and things like this. And of course, without that situation, I would never have done that. But it's surprising what, if you have all the time in the world to do this, how much you can access through memory. But the primary memory that we're interested in as Dhamma practitioners is mindfulness. And there's two descriptions of mindfulness. One is attention and the other one is memory. But what kind of memory is mindfulness? Mindfulness is to remember the instructions to carry out the Dhamma. So mindfulness is given as a simile. The simile is a sentry who guards a city. It's a walled city, and everybody who comes into that city has to come through one gate. And nobody can get into that city except through that gate. And that sentry there is mindfulness. And mindfulness doesn't just watch people come in or out. Mindfulness is a guard and has to recognize elements that are not welcome in the city, and that an alert should be sent out so that the guards can keep that person out of the city. You can't let enemies come into a walled city. So this is a difference, very important simile for what mindfulness is a very alert and fully informed sentry. And that sentry must stay awake and alert. And if it nods off, if it becomes forgetful, if it does not pay attention and know who is to be admitted to the city and who is not to be admitted to the city, then things will go wrong and bad information will come into the city, or bad actors will come into the city. So this is the role of memory. It is to be alert and attentive. Now, what are the bad actors? The bad actors are the 5 hindrances. They must be kept out of the city. Anything which is not a product of samatha, vipassana, serenity and clarity of sight, and with accurate accounts of the external world. And these accurate accounts of the external world is the world is impermanent, insubstantial, and unsatisfactory. And as long as messengers or people come in that have that message, the mindfulness will let them into the city. But if they come in saying that there is something permanent, satisfactory, and substantial, then mindfulness is to screen that out. And also to screen out aversion and greed. Misinformed aversion, like ill will and desire. So these are not welcome in the city. So that's a very important question about what is memory and what is mindfulness, because these overlap. So it's attention and memory of what to allow to pervade the mind and the emotional structure, and what to disallow. And you're to call out the muscle to prevent this from coming in. You have tactics for removing people from a city, from an area of the city, etc. And you have people who designated for that. The security force is called in, or some negotiator is called in, or a social worker is called in. So different types of responses are called for to remove the 5 hindrances, to prevent the 5 hindrances from returning. And then other PR people are to welcome in those that are beneficial to the city. So you call out positive encouragements for certain things to be allowed into your mind and your emotional structure. So this is where we hook up mindfulness and right effort. And by the way, so most of the descriptions of mindfulness are mere observers. So the sentry is there just counting bad people and good people coming into the city instead of just taking account of the number of people coming into the city, not discriminating. But that's not what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is a very discriminating, careful border guard, and does not allow certain people in. It questions them. Well, so that's a brief answer to a question that could be spun out into many discourses. Next, Bodhi.
Our next question comes from Upaska Gabrielle in Edmonton. Dear Ajahn, today I tried to explain the difference between the fetters, samyojanas, and the outflows, asavas, but quickly realized I didn't really have a good grasp of it. Please enlighten me.
Well, yes. These things blur over, but the asavas are what we, the usual translation is outflows or pollutions. So, and the fetters are latent, habitual, latent tendencies. Not even habitual. They're nature itself. Your human nature has triggers, and these triggers are not always activated. I think when they're activated, we describe what comes out of certain of the fetters as asavas. We can also describe them as hindrances. So the hindrances are called nivaranas. The 5 nivarana, anger, greed, anger, agitation, sloth, and doubt. And the asavas are the whole variety of unenlightened expressions which come out rooted in the fetters. So the fetters are the roots of things. And by the way, the fetters, the samyojanas, are literally chains. And, this fetter is probably, an English translation from the 19th century. And they were familiar with fetters, which are more or less handcuffs or chains. So I guess prisoners are still fettered. But they used to chain people to walls. And they were called fettered. They were fettered to walls. And so when you have limited freedom, the fetter prevents you from going into certain areas. And so in order to get free, you have to be unlocked from your fetters. Otherwise, the fetters will restrain you and won't allow you to experience freedom. So what is it that's between us and freedom is a length of chain around our ankles or around our wrists. And the only way to ever get free is that we have to figure out how to break these chains. And this is a gradual process. I won't go into the other similes around this gradual process, etc., but you're more or less asking for clarification about. So the samyojanas, the fetters are kind of a chain, handcuff, ankle cuff, and we can't be free until those are unlocked or broken. And the asavas are kind of frustrated results that pour forth from us because we are chained. And the nivaranas, the hindrances, are also a form of that. Okay, so let's try another question.
Our next question is also from the live chat, from Jessica in Australia. If I become aware of the thinking and the thought is an opinion, how do I know if I truly believe the opinion? Are only some thoughts true? How do we know what we really think and feel?
Well, there's a saying, how do I know what I think until I hear what I have to say? I'm just kidding. Yeah, a lot of people are confused about this. I just want to say that opinions, it's not that we have no opinions or views. So this is, you'll hear this phrase again and again in Buddhism, views and opinions, views and opinions. What's the problem? And in the ordinary culture, views and opinions are how you define yourself and how you get brownie points for having views and opinions. And if you don't have views and opinions in school and put up your hand and tell your opinion and you answer the questions, then you won't get a good mark. And then in monasteries, of course, monks have to have some views and opinions. The problem is it's your relationship to your view and opinion. Sometimes our opinions are correct, sometimes they're wrong. But the real essence of suffering is your attachment to your opinion, your attachment to your view. You think socialism is the way to go, and the other guy thinks, no, capitalism is the way to go. And you can get awfully angry at the guy that doesn't understand socialism and the capitalist gets very angry at you because you don't understand the evils of socialism, all this kind of stuff. So it's not the opinion or the consideration of these things, the intellectual aspect of it. These are just ideas, aren't they? But it's when they trigger negative emotions, which would be both clinging to your idea, identifying with your idea, feeling hurt if other people don't understand your ideas, or maybe not hurt but frustrated because you believe that this is the way to the good, and nobody's listening. So this is the problem: is you will be condemned to a whole life of suffering if you don't understand that. As long as you have opinions that you cling to, you're going to suffer. But opinions and views that you are not clinging to do not make you suffer. And by the way, some people think that you should get to the point where you have no views and opinions, but it's not that. It's, I don't know how you function without a view and an opinion, but it's your emotional relationship to your various theories about the world and how it should be and how it is, etc. So it's clinging to views and opinions. And as far as knowing whether your opinion is true, how do I know my thought is true? How do I know? Well, you don't. You make your best guess. Who can know? In almost every area of life, certainly in the scientific realm, even that's the nature of science, is that you don't actually know anything. It's the evidence suggests such and such, and there's a certain percentage or probability that this is the case. But you can never say that it's absolutely the case. There's always, if new evidence comes up, you're supposed to abandon your previous view and opinion. So it's a matter of judgment about how you think, how close you think something is to the truth. And it's important to be easy about that. Say that, absolute certainty about things is virtually impossible. I mean, you can be certain about it, but you may be wrong. And that's one of the essences of Buddhism is the allowance that things are uncertain. It's never too sure about things. And you should feel free and relaxed with that uncertainty. It's okay. You can't know everything. You can hardly know anything. And that's fine. You can still be at peace in the midst of that. This area is very, very important and one of the hardest things to understand. So we frequently, as monks, we see people come to monasteries and they're just full of views and opinions. And if you can't get over your clinging to your views and opinions, it's pretty well a guaranteed one-way ticket out of a monastery. Even if you're a monk, and I've seen monks that have been monks for years, but they can't quite get this thing about the views and opinions. That's the hard thing. That's a tricky thing. Can you detach yourself emotionally from views and opinions? If you can, you go free. If you can't, it's just a matter of time until you're triggered again. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
Our next question is from Theodore in Fargo, North Dakota. You mentioned in a video on breath meditation that I should be taking no more than 4 breaths per minute. This concerned me greatly, as it seems impossible. My breaths tend to be shallow and frequent, even in deep meditation. How can I shorten my breaths?
Yeah, what I'm indicating is people often are trying to determine whether they're actually experiencing samadhi, and particularly what we call jhana. And one of the characteristics, so it's hard to know if your inner experience is something like somebody else's inner experience. So it's like two people talking about what it's like to be in love. And somebody says, well, I get, my heart rate flutters, or my knees get weak and so forth. And when I see the person, and the other person says, that doesn't happen to me. I just feel generous, or I want to protect them or something. So, and you're trying to figure out, is what they feel, is that what I feel? And are we talking about the same thing? And is that what that is? So when the attempt to describe what happens in concentration or jhana is a slippery thing when we start talking about subjective experiences. So I'm trying to bring out a few objective experiences. What happens to the respiration rate in samadhi? And this is something that they observed in the time of the Buddha, and you see this in the commentaries as one way to describe what seems to happen generally is that the respiration rate, the number of breaths per minute, decreases in samadhi. Now, there's only one little problem here, is that they didn't have minutes in the time of the Buddha or the commentaries. They didn't even have hours. They expressed a short unit of time is called a finger snap, and a little longer period of time is called one squeeze of milk from a cow's udder. So that's kind of about 2 seconds. And then there's not too many units beyond that, except for about a 4-hour period in the day, morning, afternoon, evening. So, but they noticed that their breath slowed down. But in this modern time, we have clocks and minute hands and seconds. So we can actually count breaths. We can actually figure out what the respirations per minute. And by the way, I think if you look in the Wikipedia or whatever you want to look in about average respiration rates, it's about 12 to 15, so per minute. The average person takes about 12 to 15 breaths per minute. And if you're in a hospital and the nurse comes in and they want to just check on you, they'll look at your respiration rate, and if it's rapid or if it's very low, if it's outside of this range of 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, they might think something's going on. So this is what happens in concentration, and it's quite universally measured in people who are good meditators, advanced meditators. The respiration per minute goes down. And the figure that I sometimes use is about 2.5 breaths per minute, is very indicative that you're probably in a state of samadhi. The 8th factor of the Eightfold Path, and it's a type, samadhi probably based on breath meditation. Why breath meditation? Because it's not a discursive form of meditation. There's no ideas involved. There's no object. It's just and it's designed to cut out excessive discursive thinking. Discursive means an internal dialogue, an internal process of words and ideas going on. And when that happens, it just seems to that the brain begins to require less oxygen, or the respiration is not so much respiration is not required. So maybe the prefrontal cortex or something is normally taking up a lot of energy, and when you relax that and don't have to do that, then perhaps the respiration goes down because of that. That's a modern explanation of why it is, and it may not be the right one, but it's definitely correlated with that. But it's not by controlling your breath. Now, notice that in yoga techniques, they do actually control their breath. They attempt to control the length of the breath and the frequency of the breath. And that's kind of a reverse way of coming to this. By controlling your breath, you can sometimes reduce the amount of thinking that you have to do, and the anxiety and the worry and so forth. So that's a kind of a approach through the body. You know, this hatha yoga is kind of body yoga, and kind of approaching the mind through the body. And Buddhist meditation, if you want to call it a form of yoga, it's called Raja Yoga, which is royal yoga, meaning strictly through the mind. Mind-only yoga. So you end up controlling your body by controlling your mind. And the reverse process is controlling your mind by controlling your body. So there's two ways to come to this. But in breath meditation instructions by the Buddha, which is found in this sutta called Anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, he never indicates that you need to exert control over your breath. He just says, observe. Sometimes you take a long breath, and sometimes you take a short breath. Attend to that. Watch that. Notice that. And it's a very hard thing to keep noticing, because your breath is a very uninteresting experience. But he's asking you to pay attention to this very uninteresting experience of breathing itself and noting long breath or short breath. Not controlling it, not determining it, but just noting it in order to find an object for attention, which is quite neutral and doesn't trigger a lot of thoughts. And that's the way eventually that your breath perhaps will come down to a lower rate. But don't worry about it too much. If your breaths are 6 a minute or 8 a minute, don't worry about it too much. It's not your breath. That's just a measurement. It's just a way of measuring, an external or objective way of measuring things. What's really important is are you staying attentive to the breath? Are you beginning to experience the positive emotional experience of joy, in that you're free of impediments to the meditation, that you're free to just abide in the experience of the breath? And that is your body becoming at ease? Are you feeling less uncomfortable? Are the pains in your body subsiding? So this is the effect of concentration, of meditation, of samadhi meditation. So yes, okay. Hope that helps. Please go on. Yeah.
Speaking of PT, our next question is from the live chat. Michael from Brighton, UK. I've been getting good PT and Sukkah and a very peaceful mind with few thoughts in my meditations. However, there remains a lingering frustration. I never go any deeper. Any tips?
Well, first of all, count your blessings that you have any PT. By the way, there is no such thing as bad PT. There's only good PT. So PT, for those who are listening, means joy. It is the emotion of joy. And ease of body is Sukkah. So your body, mind feels you're happy, and you're joyful. And it's kind of like after a hard day's work and you get your paycheck and you go home and then you can have a nice bath and you got enough money and everything, and you're enjoying yourself. you feel relieved. You've done your homework, everything's ready, and you're looking forward to a nice meal and so forth. That you get joy from that. The joy of not being harassed, not being under pressure. So this is the joy that arises in samadhi, is that you don't have any, your troubles are gone for a while. You're not angry anymore, you're not craving things, you're not agitated or depressed or tired or worried or doubtful. And that, just to be free of those normal harassments of the mind is delightful. You suddenly become delighted. You're set free from your normal tyrannical master, who abides within you. And then your body relaxes as well. You feel happy. So you want to, first of all, congratulations. I congratulate anybody who's happy. And especially if you're finding a little happiness in meditation, that's a wonderful thing. And you're on the right track. But you just need to be curious and go deeper. Keep going. Ask for more. And it might be that you have to sit for longer periods. One way, if you're actually interested in this deeper jhanic experience, is that depending on your schedules and everything, but once a week, you're going to have to set aside a period of time where you're isolated from every distraction. You go to your room, free yourself from any phone calls, duties, family intrusions, anything, for about 3 hours at least. And you got to be, no disturbances. And so do this, and you don't have to sit the entire time in one posture, but if your legs get, cramped or painful, then you can stand up slowly, mindfully, just sway back and forth and everything. Give yourself a break, or even move a little bit around the room, but then sit down again. And you need a period of up to 3 hours to find out if you can go deeper, because the fact that you get stonewalled at this level of joy, and you might think, I tried for an hour. An hour is not long enough. So the mind will resist going deeper, and sometimes it'll resist for 2 hours, but eventually it gives up and goes deeper. So I would say a minimum period, if you want to know about this, of a period of 3 hours is what you need to set yourself aside. And just try to outweight the resistances of your mind to see if you can break through to that next deeper level. If you can't do it in 3 hours, then okay, you're not ready. There's something on your mind. There's an impediment on your mind, and you're going to have to perhaps figure it out. It might be what was keeping you out of this. Why did you come out? Were you worried about something? Did you want to watch a program or something? What's bringing you out? And that's the impediment. So that's what has to go. You have to be less interested in some stimulus, or less worried about family duties or jobs or something like that, if you want to go deeper. And so that's how you find out what's between me and going deeper. Yeah. Okay, let's go on to the next question, Bodhi.
Our next question is also in the live chat from Enrique. Hello, Ajahn. Greetings from Colombia. Did the Buddha achieve enlightenment just from breath meditation? If so, how important is metta compared to breath meditation?
Well, hello to Colombia. I think that the first meditation that the Buddha did was actually metta before he did breath, because he decided to stop torturing himself. Now that's the reason. That's why he quit hanging out with the extreme ascetics. was out of a goodwill for himself. He said, this self-abuse, this painful practice, which was thought to be beneficial religiously or somehow spiritually, is actually to be dispensed with and not indulged in. It's low and painful and not to be done. Now, how did he get that idea? I think it's because he's had a good heart. And that's what loving kindness is a good heart. That's what tells you not to inflict pain on yourself or other people. Don't do that. So that's the beginning of it. It's actually goodwill. And that goodwill has great judgment. That goodwill is the beginning of good thoughts, the proper way to live self and for others, and then you will get good plans about how to behave and what to do for yourself and what to do for others. So that's the beginning. And then it's the result of that goodwill that brought him under the shade of the Bodhi tree in a cooler place and said, go ahead, eat some food, nourish your body. Your body's not your enemy. And then he's treating himself well. He's kind of treating himself probably something like his mother would have, or his aunt. Of course, his mother died when he was 7 or 8 days old, and his aunt took care of him with other relatives. So he's taking care of himself, and that probably triggered an associative memory of the loving kindness from his aunt and so forth. And then that led to his memory of breath meditation when he was a child. And he wasn't meditating, he was just breathing, and he noticed he's breathing, and he experienced this kind of bliss, joy and bliss. But he's bathed in loving kindness, the loving kindness of his close family, his aunt and his sisters or relatives he's bathed in their loving kindness, and the mere experience of breathing is a condition of bliss. And then that leads to the opening up of understanding. His mind is in a perfectly purified, clear way, and he suddenly accesses deep memories of previous lives. Now you can think about these previous life memories as more or less you can see it, instead of thinking about it as linear series of lives, you can think about it as the lives of all beings. That you can imagine yourself as anybody. You know this saying, there but for the grace of God go I? So somebody's being led off to be executed. Somebody's taken off to jail. Somebody is in a car accident, and you think to yourself, that could have been me. So that's identification with any terrible things happen to people, and it could have been you. And sometimes beautiful things happen, and it could have been you as well. So this is universal understanding of the nature of being, of just existing. How does he access this? He accesses it beginning with goodwill towards himself, the security and love and joy that comes from this relaxed state, and then the clarity of mind when you stop thinking too much and worrying and preoccupying yourself. The mind brightens up and becomes lucid and starts to have a view of the universe, what it is to be a being in this universe, what it is to be a vulnerable, sensitive being in this universe, and bad things and good things happen to beings. And he starts to see that, what's the situation here? How do I deal with this, the problems of existence, the suffering of existence? So this is how insight arises. So this is the natural process. And until you set aside your worries and your fears and your anxieties and allow the mind to relax and feel safe and serene, you can't really access this potential clarity and insight. So that's what the word vipassana means, to see clearly. To see with a clear mind, you see clearly. And focused on the experience of existence, not scientific ideas, not mathematical ideas, not social ideas, but the facts of existence. That's what clear seeing into the facts of existence. So you can see the progression. So it's very important that we see it that way. But a good question, and I hope I gave you a good answer. Bodhi.
Our next question is also from the live chat. It's from RJ Clue. Why do devas always fight each other?
RJ, devas don't always fight each other. They don't, in fact, they don't fight each other. But there is this, now we're into a very esoteric area. I'm sure it's not on people's minds much, but there is a cosmology, there is a view of other dimensions of existence. Really, you're probably talking about this, there's two realms, the Asura realm and the lower devas. And the devas are kind of angelic beings. And they're living in this various levels of heaven. And there's various gradations of heaven, you see. And the Asuras used to be in a kind of a lower heaven. They got kicked out for drinking too much. A bit of alcoholic indulgence. And they've always wanted to get back there. And they keep climbing up the spiritual mountain, attempting to force their way into the heavens. And they have a conflict with the devas in the lower realms of heaven. So that's probably the conflict that you're talking about, is a perpetual war. I think it's to do with that. What really is being expressed is that there's a spiritual envy, and people want to attain heaven, but they want to get there by force, and it's impossible to get there by force. You get there by surrendering, by giving up force, and by non-violence rather than violence, and by loving kindness rather than ambition. So this is the struggle, perhaps, even within an individual, that we keep throwing ourselves out of heaven. We're in conflict with the higher types of consciousness when we try to get through ambition or force. And you can see this throughout the world. All kinds of cults and pseudo-spiritual communities it turns bad, it turns sour, it turns violent, it turns crazy. And that's where ego wants to be spiritual. Ego wants to get into heaven, but ego can't get into heaven because that's the thing you have to get rid of. You have to free yourself from these ambitions and so forth. So this is perhaps a description of this, but yes, it's not the devas that are fighting each other. It's the asuras and devas of the lower realms that are in conflict. It's a very interesting cosmology, and you shouldn't. In order to extract the meaning for you out of this, you have to think about the nature of these stories and these cosmologies, and how it applies to you and to other beings that you can see in the world, the types of consciousness that you can see in the world. Yeah. Okay, Bodhi. Yeah.
Our next question is from Sir Sweets-a-Lot. Ajahn Sona, In the Arya Pariyasana Sutta, who is Brahma Sahampati? What is the significance of him asking the Buddha to teach the Dhamma to the world?
Well, this is another interesting story. Now, it appears that after the enlightenment of the Buddha, now, when you have the backstory of the Buddha, it's usually given as this, multiple universes ago. He is a bodhisattva, and he comes across a Buddha, and he's so inspired by this Buddha of a previous world system, that he makes a determination to become a fully enlightened Buddha. So the term for this is Samma Sambuddha, a fully enlightened Buddha. And he takes eons and eons to get there. There's vast, almost incomprehensible units of time. You're talking about universes coming in and out of existence while he's pursuing this. So finally he arrives in the 5th century BC. He arrives and he manages to attain Buddhahood. And he's now a fully enlightened Buddha. He's a Samma Sambuddha. And then he thinks to himself, I would say that this is somewhat of a dubious story. You see, that it's hard to believe that after how many, you remember the number of kalpas? The kalpas are like vast unfoldings of, he's been on this thing, and the nature of a fully enlightened Buddha is to teach. It's the difference. There's another type of Buddha. It's called a Pratyeka Buddha. And the Pratyeka Buddha is a fully enlightened being, but can't teach, doesn't teach, can't teach. A Sammasambuddha, that's the definition. They teach. So he gets there, and then he suddenly thinks, I don't know whether I want to teach this. People are so, they're preoccupied with other things. They don't want to hear this. It might be just a waste of my time, And then, so sahampati is this god. He's not the Christian idea of a god, but because we don't have one. In Buddhism, there is no idea of a supreme deity that creates the universe or anything. So sahampati is a fairly high deity, and he suddenly he's experienced this awakening. It appears to him as luminosity and light, and he realizes a Buddha has come into existence here. So he goes down. He senses that the Buddha is hesitant to teach, and he goes there and asks the Buddha, please teach. There are beings with little dust in their eyes. And so, for their sake, please go ahead. Not everybody, there will be some who listen to you. Now, this whole story is problematic to me. I mean, I don't get it, because the Buddha doesn't know this. The Buddha doesn't know that there's people with little dust in their eyes. Of all beings who would know this, the Buddha would know this. So why does he need sahampati to tell him that? Is this new information to him? Story doesn't make sense much. But it makes sense if it's not for the Buddha. The story's not for the Buddha. The story is for you. And the meaning of this story is that don't take it for granted that somebody's got the rest of their life to waste teaching you. They don't need you. So the Buddha doesn't need you. You need the Buddha. Teachers don't need you. You need the teacher. Don't waste their time. Don't mess around. Don't be resistant. Don't argue because they don't have time. Because there's other people who are interested and whose ears are open, who are going to try, and they're the first priority because that's going to have success in reducing the suffering of beings, those who listen and do. So don't take it for granted. Nobody has to teach you. So this is important. There are religions where there's some sort of obligation where you have to teach people, you have to rescue them, no matter how resistant they are to it. That's your job, and you have to take that job on. Buddhism doesn't have that. No. This is up to you. You can. Samsara has been going on incalculably. It's beginningless. So if you want out, if you want an improvement in your life, you better make the effort. The teacher just doesn't have time. The teacher has time for those who are making effort because that's where the time is best spent, not for those who are not interested. They don't need you. You need them. So this story is for the sake of getting people to understand, look, the Buddha isn't collecting brownie points by going around and teaching people. The Buddha doesn't need brownie points. Enlightened people don't need more brownie points, and they don't have to save anybody. They don't have to. They do it because there are people who will benefit and who are listening and who are interested. And it's only because of that that they do it. But if there aren't people like that, they won't do it. So there's this other version of the Buddha, the Pacceka Buddha, that stays silent. Because I guess at that time, people aren't interested. They're not listening. So they experience blissful liberation, but nobody's motivated enough. So that it's a chastising story. It doesn't, I don't think it makes a lot of sense, but it's a story for the students, not for the teachers, actually. Yeah. One more question, I think.
Good. We have a question that was pre-submitted from Anonymous in London, UK. Could you comment on Buddhist perspectives on anxiety disorders? And we have in the chat from Starscream, Ajahn, how do I deal with anxiety and restlessness? It's disturbing me to the point of not being able to study my law school work.
Dhamma is the cure for anxiety. I was one of those people studying in universities and full of anxiety and stuff like that. And I particularly pity you being in law, studying for a law degree. There's all kinds of study make you anxious. Universities are almost factories for anxiety disease. It's a competitive. It's the pressure's on. You're not a teenager anymore, and you're about to enter adulthood. And if the message is, if you don't finish this degree, you're going to be subject to a life of poverty. And it may come down to that last exam. 1 hour in your life determines your entire future. It's a terrible way to do things. I mean, to put everything on the line in an hour is enough to give you heart palpitations. It's terrible. So you're going to have to deal with the pressures of society and the pressures of modernity. And that's why they call it, I mean, in the 20th century, that was basically called the age of anxiety. Because there was an emphasis, it's a worldly emphasis. It's success in the world is the thing. And in previous societies were more spiritual emphasis about what happens after you die and things like that. So, yeah, anxiety is that you're in this huge competition with every other human, and if you don't get lucky and lose, and it's going to be bad. Terrible message. So this is the way you need a spiritual framework for life, and a way of deactivating these completely useless and destructive emotions like anxiety. And there's whole schools of psychology that try to spin the idea of anxiety is some sort of good thing. Well, you need anxiety, otherwise you wouldn't do anything, and so forth. Well, that language is just so unskillful. That idea is just so. There are many schools of psychology that are terrible, destructive to humans. Anxiety is not a good motivator. It's a motivator, and you will get things done, but it's a bad motivator. It poisons your whole system. And there are other ways, and it doesn't mean that if you stop being anxious, you won't do anything. That's ridiculous. The best things that have ever been done in human history are done out of curiosity, playfulness, creativity, love. Those are tremendous motivators, and they get tremendous results. So that's you want both the right motivation and good results. So you're going to have to switch and say, anxiety won't help me pass my law exams, by the way. But playfulness, goodwill, loving kindness, all of those things might. So there are other ways to motivate yourself and to deal with life than an anxious dog-eat-dog, law of the jungle way. And you really should explore these alternatives. And anxiety just has to go. And you can live without anxiety very well, very successful. In fact, you can't live well and successfully with anxiety, because whatever you get from it, your wealth or anything, is always tainted. Your emotions are toxic, and so whatever you get is you're poisoning yourself. And there's alternative energies of goodwill, playfulness, curiosity, joy that will give you all of the best that you can possibly have. And everybody's got their limits. Some people are talented, some people are not, etc. But the best you can do is with those positive emotions, the best of you will come out. So yeah, you need to work on the various meditations, the framework, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and that will pull you out of anxiety. Yeah, that's the way out. So we have come to the end of our hour, almost to the second, and very good. So I wish you all well in your anti-anxiety project, especially for the world at this time, which is a little bit frantic. And you can live well, happily, joyfully, playfully, lovingly, and that's the best way to live.